Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Super Lunch Post Podcast, episode number 109. I am Brendan. We're talking about Fight Night, Blaydes versus Daukaus. All right, so we had some really good fights on this card. We had some interesting, prospects. We had some movement in the top 10 of multiple divisions, lots of fun fights, fun knockouts, great stuff. It was a good fight night compared to UFC London as from last week. I don't know if it holds a candle to that, but then again, I don't think anything can. Like, that's not cool to compare everything to UFC London. So other than that, it's a good card. We're going to go over it. Let's go. So before we get started, please like the video. If you do like MMA, if you like podcasts about MMA, if you like hearing about, UFC event coverage, MMA event coverage, and hearing about breakdowns of fights, I do this every single week on every single UFC card and a lot of other MMA cards I'm starting to do with some other MMA organizations, depending on how they're set up and like public interest. So putting a like on the video lets me know that you're interested in this stuff, and I will do more things like this in the future. And please subscribe to the channel because, like I said, I do this every single week. Let's get started. Fucking razor blades. Yes. 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 Dude, he is not fucking done. For those of you guys just tuning in and you guys have never seen me before, never watched an episode before, I am a huge fan of Curtis Blaydes. There's a backstory to it. It doesn't matter. I am just a huge fan of his. And he's also from Chicago. I think he has gotten, not the shaft necessarily, but he has gotten a bad run of it. And I believe that his chin is just not a heavyweight chin. Although in this fight, it did hold up in that first round, which we can go over. But he did get the KO finish in the second round, a spectacular KO finish. Well, no, it was a TKO finish, sorry. He knocked Daukaus down with a beautiful right hand in the second round. Put Daukaus down, finished with elbows, and then Herb Dean stepped in. So first round breakdown. 23 to 12 in favor of Blaydes. Daukaus had some smoother hands, and I thought he was likely going to land on Blaydes and put him down based off of like the first couple interactions. But Blaydes made some adjustments here, which really turned things around, and he started landing some good shots of his own. And then interestingly, for those of you guys who don't like Curtis Blaydes, you don't like his wrestling style, you don't like all that stuff, didn't wrestle at all, didn't even attempt a takedown, didn't threaten a takedown, didn't even fake a takedown. So for all of you guys who like, also he's a very interesting fighter anyway, just because his skill, all right, what he's able to do to these other heavyweights. The only thing that has held him back is his chin. It's just as simple as that. If you put not Mark Hunt's chin, that's not fair. But if you put another heavyweight's chin on Curtis Blaydes, he's beating most people in the division, if not everybody, not named Ngannou, right? But those couple shots that landed from Ngannou on him in the two fights that he had, he clipped him behind the ear, and the first one was a stoppage due to like a swelling under the eye. So it's just, dude, it could have, I'm telling you, Curtis Blaydes is still really good. I don't know if he's ever going to be champion just because of the way the division shakes out. He called out Gane after this, which I thought was fantastic. I think that's a good matchup. I think it puts him it also called for an interim title fight against Gane, which I think would be weird. Just because Gane hasn't had a fight since Ngannou, and then that's when he already had the interim belt. So I am totally on board with the UFC making another interim heavyweight belt. The last one was a little it was a little suspect, right? They were trying to kick Ngannou out, and they were waiting for him to fail because he was making a stink about pay. So I can understand why people were upset about the interim belt before, but this is the perfect situation and the best situation for an interim belt when your champion is going to be out for a significant period of time. But he is likely going to come back and defend his title. So therefore, in order to keep the division interesting or whatever, and you want to put in a belt, which belts don't matter, by the way. For those of you guys who have just tuned in here, have never heard me say this before or haven't heard any other MMA analyst, I'm not an analyst. Okay, I'm just somebody who really enjoys fights and likes talking about. But if you've listened to other analysts talk about this stuff and break down the court case from the the big court case about fighter pay, right? The antitrust, I believe, the antitrust lawsuit against the UFC from the fighters. The information that came out from that court case, which is public record, you can go look it up. There are documents and statements from the UFC, officially from them, saying that the belts hold no value. The contracts are what matter. Right? So the belts are all made up. Now, in the public eye and how the public perception and the way they're put forth and the way they're portrayed, I know those are synonyms, but all those things, like, I understand that the belts do hold value, and because of that, the UFC often keeps things in line that most likely makes sense as far as the belt changing hands, how long that person's allowed to be out and hold the belt, the fighter, not fighter pay necessarily, but who they're allowed to fight, like, not who they're allowed to fight, but who's going to fight them next, right? You're unlikely to see a champ taking on an unranked fighter. It's just not likely to happen. There's just a lot of things that the belt not necessarily implies, but the UFC tends to follow along with a pattern, right? And because of that, we all associate the belts having value, but they don't. They don't hold any value, and they have no intrinsic value, both for the fighter or for the UFC having to give. They might have it. So here's the thing. Now, the belt and being a champion doesn't intrinsically hold a value on its own, but if you have a championship clause in your contract, so in your contract, let's say you have it documented and dictated that if you do get the belt, just flat out, right? We're not going to put stipulations on it. Like, let's say you get the belt, you now have the ability to renegotiate the contract, right? I doubt that the UFC would sign up for this unless it was a highly touted prospect or someone with a built-in name recognition, someone, like a Brock Lesnar, like a new version of a Brock Lesnar or something like that. So because of that, then the champion, being a champion and having the belt could hold value, but it's not because of the belt or because of the status as a champion. It's because it was dictated in your contract. And I go through all this stuff to say that an interim belt, people don't like them because they feel like they devalue the real belt. People do like them because they think that, oh, hey, they're fighting for a belt. I personally count them as being a champion because barring specific circumstances that have happened in the past where maybe I wouldn't necessarily consider that person a champion. Overall, I think if you have gotten an interim belt, you're not the undisputed UFC champion, but even then, like, many of the interim title holders got promoted to the champion, like the undisputed title, because the undisputed champion either left or was sidelined due to injury, those kinds of things. So in this scenario, giving another interim belt to, I went on a long diatribe there, but giving the interim belt title back to Gane feels weird to me. So I laid all that out because I feel like, being an interim champion does make you a champion, but also that it doesn't mean anything necessarily as far as, like, the rules around it, right? Because belts have no meaning. Like, you can give anybody a freaking belt as far as the UFC goes. They made the BMF belt for no fucking reason. So when it comes to all of those things, what do you guys feel about, Curtis Blaydes fighting for an interim title? What do you feel like about Gane fighting for an interim title? And here's the thing: this event took place in Ohio, which is the hometown, the home state, but also is it? Oh shoot, is it Columbus? Oh poopy, oh no. But Stipe was there. Yeah, Columbus. Okay. Yeah, so Stipe was in the house. Stipe, obviously the former heavyweight champion, the most decorated and arguably best heavyweight in UFC history, one of the best heavyweights of all time. He was in the house, and Curtis Blaydes was asked by DC about Stipe and maybe fighting him or whatever, and he didn't sidestep it. He just said, like, he has a lot of respect for him and he wants to be like him and maybe he'll have to fight him, but that wasn't what his focus was, and I don't know why necessarily. I have been calling for that fight for a very long time. I want to see Blaydes versus Stipe. I wanted to see it when Stipe was the champ and DC was having his little he was playing footsie with the title forever, and the UFC was trying to push him to get one more title so he could retire with the belt, which I'm glad he didn't get, because retiring with the belt really devalues the next champion. All right, it takes a long time before we consider again, not always the case, but it usually takes time for fans, like UFC fans, to consider a new champion the rightful belt holder when the previous champion was never defeated and retired. Right now, given circumstances, like that's not always the case, but anyway, it doesn't matter. In this scenario, I really would be down to see Stipe versus Blaydes. Now, that's a good fight, and the interim belt makes more sense because Stipe has not fought in a long time, and I know that his last fight was a loss against Ngannou, similar to how Gane recently lost to Ngannou. I get that. But Stipe has more heavyweight presence. He has the championship title holder history. He has a rightful claim to getting a title shot after a win, whereas Gane might not, because he just had his opportunity and he doesn't have the split score with Ngannou, right? He has one loss to him, even though that he could have won that fight pretty definitively in that last round if he just stayed on top. It was a very boring fight, though. So, the storyline works out here. Plus, Blaydes, here's the thing. I've called for this before, too. Blaydes versus Ngannou makes a lot of sense. I understand that he has 2 losses to Ngannou. I get it, right? But, and this goes for future storylines and implications, right, as far as title picture goes. So, if let's say Blaydes takes on Stipe, which is what I want to happen, and I'm kind of projecting here, because I don't think Blaydes versus Gane is for a title. I think there's other fighters who are... it would make more sense to put an interim title on other than Gane, right? So, not to say that I think he's worse than those fighters, just because of the recent fight structure and like how he just lost, right? So, Blaydes versus Stipe. Stipe wins that. Let's say Stipe wins that fight. Let's go this first, and then I'll tell you why I really want to see it. And I've described this before, but I really, really, really want to see this fight. So let's say Stipe beats Blaydes, okay, definitively or otherwise. Let's say he gets the win. It puts him on the back on the winning track. He's already ranked number 1 or number 2 or whatever. He's the former champ, and remember, he is 1-1 with Ngannou. And in the second fight, it wasn't like he was totally out of it. Right, he got caught by Ngannou rushing in because he thought that he hurt Ngannou, but he didn't. So you make of that what you will. I'm not saying that Stipe should have or could have won that fight. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think Ngannou rightfully won that. He showed a lot of improvements, especially in the grappling exchanges in the first round. We just didn't get to see him, through the 5th round, because I think that's where Stipe would have excelled with his cardio. Big advantage there. So, third fight, there's still a storyline there. That's why I bring all that up, right? There's still a storyline. Ngannou clearly hasn't advanced past his cardio struggles completely. We saw that in the Gane fight. We saw that in the grappling exchanges. He has improved, and he has gotten better because he really wanted to wrestle Gane because he was getting outstruck on the feet. So how would that interaction go with Stipe going later on? Would he be able to out-grapple Stipe in the later rounds? That would be really interesting. Maybe Stipe's cardio doesn't hold up because of the grappling exchanges and being so competitive. So there's a lot of fun storylines. Plus, like I said, they're 1-1. All right, so we could have the definitive end to that would be a trilogy. It'd be the definitive bookend on their fights and this little chapter in UFC history. So I think that would be fun. Flip side, right? So Blaydes pretty much ran roughshod through the division. He has 1 loss. I'm pretty sure he has 1 loss in his last 5 or 6 fights. 7 fights. He's only lost to 2 people in the UFC. Okay, Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis. I didn't have to look to that. I was kind of counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So in his last 7 fights, he's 6-1. Okay, he's on a 2-fight win streak. He just beat oh yeah, that's right. He just beat Rosenstruck pretty definitively as well. That was only a 3-rounder, not a main event though. It doesn't matter. I have some stuff to say about that when we talk about the Magny versus Griffin fight here. But before I drag this on too much longer, we're gonna move on from this. But anyway, he is Curtis Blaydes' storyline. He's currently on a 2-fight win streak. He's 6-1 in his last 7 fights, so that's very good in the heavyweight division. Justin Willis, now not so great. Abdurakhimov, good win. Junior Dos Santos, when he did it, good win. Alexander Volkov just competed at the upper level, and he's been doing really well, good win. Derek Lewis, he fucking dominated that first round, and then got caught by a punch from Derek Lewis in the second round. So shit happens. Dominated Rosenstruck for 3 rounds. Good win. Great win. He's still in the top 10 here. And then just beating Chris Daukaus after. I mean, I understand that a lot of the luster of Daukaus was knocked off by Derek Lewis knocking him off recently, but that doesn't diminish the win that much. We were looking at the rankings here. Curtis Blaydes probably, I don't know how he goes above Tai Tuivasa after this, but anyway, I think it's funny that he's ahead of Derek Lewis because he does have a loss to Derek. So, Aspinall, obviously, after last weekend, moving up into the 6th position here. So he's, kicking down the door of the top 5. Volkov still in the top 7. Rosenstruck is number 8. Daukaus was number 9. So, I mean, I would expect, Curtis Blaydes has the best recent history outside that loss to Lewis, and it's a good storyline for him to get the title shot as far as deserving it when it comes to his recent strength of schedule. Here's the thing. He has 2 losses to Ngannou. The first one, was due to the blown up eye, and then the second one, he got caught early behind the head, and then he was off balance. He wasn't like knocked out. Right, he was off balance, and they stopped the fight pretty early. Early stoppage or whatever. I understand Ngannou hits hard, so maybe he saved him some damage. Shit happens. So, like I said, he has 2 losses to him already. Here's the thing: he's done enough to get the title shot. If he gets the interim title, it's pretty much that's the thing is the interim title means that you should be next for the title shot. That's usually how it goes. Not always, but most of the time in UFC history, that's how it goes. So let's say he does get the belt. He beats Stipe. First of all, great win. Okay, beating arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time. Still not necessarily out of his prime, so far out of his prime. Also vindicating my feelings about him possibly being able to be the undisputed champion at one point, because he had the win streak, he had the strength of schedule, and he could have gotten the title fight instead of DC, and had he fought Stipe at the time, he would have been the undisputed champ. So that's why I really want to see this fight. I've been calling for it for about 5 years now. So he gets the win, and then now he goes up in Ngannou. So what happens with Ngannou? See, now because the UFC doesn't like Ngannou anymore, this might not be as good. But before, when they were pushing Ngannou, the story from my end was, hey, have him have the 3rd fight. If Ngannou knocks him out or gets the decision win, they never have to fight again. And that champion, his championship status when it comes to Curtis Blaydes versus Ngannou, that can never happen again. So Blaydes is just a contender at this point. If Blaydes gets the win, it's the easiest rematch to book for Ngannou because he's already got 2 wins over him. He gets an immediate title shot at the title rematch. It's great for Ngannou. I mean, it's win-win for Ngannou because even if he loses, he doesn't lose that hard. He gets to fight him right away, fight him right back. I don't know if that's necessarily the case of the UFC anymore though, because he's not. They're not big fans of his shenanigans. I don't say shenanigans. He's worried about fighter pay. And, I'm all for that. So, okie dokes. Good win for Blaydes. Huge fan. Love the guy. All right, let's talk about Joanne Wood versus Alexa Grasso. So, Grasso got the takedown early, not much damage on the ground. On the feet, Wood was more measured and had better combos. Grasso with the bigger missing shots, but then Grasso got her down again and got the rear naked choke. I don't got much to say about this. Alexa Grasso is kind of a hit or miss fighter for me. She has shown not necessarily improvements. Like, she's always been good, right? She's got losses to Felice Herrig earlier in her career, like 5 years ago. I'm not going to hold that against her, but then she lost to Tatiana Suarez, arguably the best fighter in this division who hasn't fought in forever, so maybe her time has passed, which really unfortunate. Tatiana Suarez was like an insane grappler. And then loses to Carla Esparza. So when it comes to going against good grapplers, she seems not to be able to handle it. And being in this strawweight division, I just don't know where she fits in, you know? Like, where is she going to go from here? Oh, sorry. My bad. Flyweight, not strawweight. Where does she go from here? You know, is she really going to be contending with Shevchenko ever? I don't see anything from her that says she can do it. Right? She has the grappling ability to take out people who can't grapple. You know, put her against freaking, what's her face? Mackenzie Dern, when Mackenzie Dern doesn't want to cut weight or something. You know, put her against Jennifer Maia. They both, Grasso's coming off a win. Maia's coming off a loss from this card. Put them against each other. I think that's a fine fight. I just don't know what to make of her right now. She doesn't show, like, she's not blowing the doors off of anybody. She's not showing me that she's, like, the heir apparent to the title picture here. And, you know, just nobody holds a candle. You've heard me talk about, if you've watched me before, you've heard me talk about Valentina Shevchenko. It's just nobody holds a candle to her, man. It's really hard to see effective. It's just like, oh, what cool thing is Valentina gonna do next? That's what I really enjoy watching her title fights. I'm not bored at all because she's a really interesting fighter, and she not only doesn't necessarily change it up, but she just excels in so many aspects of martial arts that you get to watch, you know, this expression in the freest form, because she just goes out there and does everything. She's just so good. Best female fighter in the world. So it's really cool to watch her fight. So I'm down to see her fight. You know, if Grasso ends up getting up there and wants to get styled on, cool. I mean, I'm not going to be mad about it. It's just, it is what it is. I don't know where she fits in the division necessarily, as far as like challenging for a title. Maybe like if you can beat Chukagi, and maybe then you get a title shot. Maybe that's what it is from now on. All right. Matt Brown, the Immortal, fighting his hometown against Brian Barberena. Brown not able to get it done here. So we'll go round by round on this one. We don't have to break it down too much. Obviously, neither one of these guys is challenging for a title ever, I don't think. I think we've seen the best of Barberena, and Brown's on the way down. I'm always rooting for Brown because I enjoy watching him fight. I enjoy his story. His grit, his determination is not necessarily unmatched, but it's just so much. I think I wrote it down here in the notes, like the last round, but he just has so much heart, man. I understand that might not be everybody's cup of tea. I enjoy a lot of aspects and different things that martial artists and fighters, if you want to just call them that, put forth in the octagon or whatever cage or whatever. One of the things that I really enjoy is skill expression, like I just said about Valentina. I really like people who have the ability to just excel in either a certain aspect, like Stephen Thompson, you know, with his karate style and the blitz and being able to like strike like a cobra. Is just incredible to watch that. Someone like, I would say Kamaru Usman with his wrestling, but he isn't the best wrestler. It would have to go back. I'd have to think about that one. Damian Maia with his grappling and just going for straight jiu-jitsu, and then people who put it all together like Valentina, right? I really enjoy all those things, but I also enjoy seeing fighters with just insane fucking heart. I really do. It brings a tear to my eye watching some of those things. watching Gagey just walk through. And I understand it's not the smartest thing. I'm not saying that it's the best technique or they're the best fighter because of it. It's just inspiring to me to watch someone take damage and come from behind, or take damage and just walk through it, and just with will, grit, and determination, just fighting for a finish. Fighting to get to the end, fighting just, for not necessarily for their life, but kind of. It's inspiring. It's like any good Hollywood movie, it tries to do that stuff too. So I think Brown really exemplifies all of those things, and it's amazing to watch him fight. I remember when he fought Silva back in the day. Also, I think that took place in Ohio, and he got hit to the body, and he crumpled, and you're like, oh, it's done. He's done. But then he got back up and just took Silva's soul. He just took his soul, man. It was incredible to watch. In this case, not necessarily. It was still fun to fucking watch, though. Not a lot of skill expression necessarily. I mean, there was plenty there. It was just very brawly and sloppy near the end, especially. So first round, Brown was working in the clinch, got some side trips, and then Barberena's corner said the stupid trips, which was funny because they worked. So not that stupid, huh? Brown looking a little tired at the end of the first round. I don't know why, but Brown did more damage in that first round, and in my opinion, I gave it to him. So 23-23. I don't think that's a controversial opinion to say Brown won that first round. Second round, Brown looked so tired, and he took some really big shots in the second round. Barberena looked like he was on the positive side of the damage, and here we go, 23-35 in favor of Bryan Barberena. So again, not a so 8. I had it going 18-18 tied going into the third here. The last round was all heart and no defense, as we can see by the striking numbers here. 35-53 in favor of Bryan Barberena. And that last, there was this last little blitz that Barberena put on, this last little combo, and I think that really gave him that last round, probably like 5 or 6 shots in there, counting out of those 53, giving him the lead and the definite win, in my opinion, which he got. He got 29-28, and he got booed, which was, not unfortunate. You like when you're fighting the hometown guy, it's really hard not to get booed. I remember when I was in Chicago and Eddie Wineland. Eddie Wineland was fighting. He's from Indiana, so he's basically like a local guy for us, and we were all rooting him on, screaming for him, and like the other guy was getting booed, and people were like, "Why were they booing him?" Because he's not from around here, and he we want our local guy to win. That's all. We don't hate the guy or anything, so that's just it is what it is. I think he handled it pretty well, saying he loves Ohio and Columbus, and blue collar, hardworking folks, that kind of stuff. Dokamali. All right, here we go. Let's talk about. Sorry, I put these notes in. Askarov versus Askarov. Askarov. What a weird name. Not weird because Askar or Askarov. It's just they're the same. Askar and Askarov. It's like being Bill, like William Williams, there are people named William Williams. It's like that first name was given to you by your parents, so they know how it's going to sound when your first name is very similar or the same to your last name. So either they did it on purpose or it's a family name. I don't know. I'm not making fun of his name. He didn't choose it or anything. It's just, Askarov. It's a little odd. So this was an excellent fight. The first round, Askarov got the takedown and took the back, and he worked for a rear naked choke for a very long time. Kai Kara-France got up with Askarov on his back, had the backpack for pretty much the entire rest of the round for like 2 minutes, and then didn't get anything. Kai Kara-France fought off the hands very well. Askarov got close to some rear naked chokes, pretty darn close, but Kai Kara-France did managed to fight them off effectively, fighting the hands very well, and walked away from that round. And in the process of walking away, Askarov shoved France's neck. Like he shoved him away. It wasn't violent or anything, but he like dismissively or angrily pushing him away. What the fuck? Like, do these guys have bad blood that I don't know about? They weren't talking shit during the round. And what was Askarov just mad because he couldn't get the finish? And then so he pushes the guy? He's supposed to just give in to you or whatever? Fuck off. That actually pissed me off. I'm like, I want to see Askarov get knocked the fuck out now because I hate that shit when people are sourpusses. I don't like that stuff. So, we are second round. This was Kai's round through and through. Kai Kara-France was landing some huge shots, good combos on the feet, and even stopped Askar's takedowns, pointing down to the ground at one point and saying, like, let's do this right here, and just throwing down. Good round for him, good damage. And we can see here on the striking numbers, obviously the first round, nothing. Kai Kara-France actually outlanded Askarov, but that's because Askarov was only going for submissions, not really doing damage when he had the back or whatever. But in the second round, Kai Kara-France way out in front, 24-12. And yes, he was missing a lot, but who gives a shit? I've talked about that before. It doesn't matter. Accuracy doesn't matter when it comes to those things. 24-12, landing really big shots, rocking Askarov multiple times. I was like, fuck yeah, take that, jackass. That's what you get for being an asshole. Third round. So Askar, in the beginning of this round, I made a note of this. I stopped making notes of these because I feel like I say it way too much, but this one actually affected the fight a little bit. So Askar kicked him right in the nuts. Like, yeah, he kicked him in the inside of the leg, but the leg carried up, and it caught Kai Kara-France right in the nuts. So Askarov immediately was like, no, I didn't. I kicked him in the leg. I'm not going to hold that against him. He probably did feel the leg kick, and it felt like it was good. But on the replay, clearly the leg traveled up, and he caught him in the cup. So he got a nice break for that, though, which is great for him. And that's the problem is Askar looked like at that point to be in less of an advantageous position than France as far as like the fight went. But anyway, Askar worked to a body triangle standing up against the cage, but then Kai shook him off. And then near the end of the round, Kai looked really tired. But he did more damage in that final round anyway, so I clearly gave it to him. And if we look at the striking numbers here, it makes sense. 23-12, very similar to how round 2 went, only he didn't really land as many big shots, and Askarov had a little bit of grappling advantage in that third round. I thought he clearly won it, 29-28. No controversy there from me. Kid's good, man. Look at the rankings here because this one, that's why I said like there was a couple contender fights on here, and this one's really good. So, Askarov was ranked number 2 before this weekend, okay, and he's been angling for a title shot. And I think Figueiredo and Moreno are supposed to be fighting for a 4th time, the first quadrilogy in UFC history, which, oddly enough, most people are on board for it because their fights are entertaining. They're very close. I think Brandon Moreno, in a lot of people's opinion, won that last fight, even though a lot of people thought Figueiredo won the last fight. It is what it is. First fight was very close, super competitive. Moreno dominated the second one. So, there is a good storyline there. They're fun fights. It's easy to book it. Let's do a 4th fight. That's fine. The problem with doing that is it does hold up the rest of the division here. Now, remember, as far as UFC history goes and this division, ever since Demetrius Johnson left, they've been almost kind of trying to kill it, right? They were, for a while, they took it off of the rankings. Like, they weren't on there. Damn it. They weren't on there anymore, okay? These guys this division was no longer on here. It was like the female flyweight division. Nope, female featherweight division. It just wasn't, there was no rankings anymore. So people were fighting for nothing. They started to cut them from the roster as well, and we saw some fighters either having to move up or leave the organization. So because of all that, when Figueiredo finally got the belt, after missing weight the first time and then making it and then being a controversial champion, but that first fight with Moreno was so interesting, even though I think he did beat, I don't know if it was Royval or whoever else he beat before that. Figueiredo's been like a really good champion. So him versus Moreno being so interesting brings the public interest back to this division, so I can understand in this circumstance holding up the rest of the division to really bring some eyes to it again and build up a champion in this division, give them a name, so that way when these other guys end up fighting against them, either their name is made or we can get or that champion continues to make their name, so we can build up the mythology and the stories in this smaller weight class that was essentially going to be gone about 5 or 6 years ago. So I'm okay with it right now. All of that being said, we're talking about Kai France here. He was ranked 6th before this weekend. I would hope that he jumps into the top 5. 2 4s. Why do that? Just make one of them a 5. That's stupid. Anyway, I don't know if he's going to switch spots with Askarov. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. I would expect maybe he jumps ahead of Brandon Royval, though, right behind Pantoja. So he could be ranked number 3 and Pantoja moves up. But yeah, he for sure is going to be in the top 5. Askarov should drop below 5 for sure. So what do we do next with France? Do we give him the title shot? That's what I'm saying is that's the problem with like these extended trilogies or quadrilogy. Now this quadrilogy is all of these contenders build up their name and their title and their win streaks, and you end up with a logjam. He beat Rogerio Bontorin with that impressive KO at the end of that first round after getting kind of dominated. He knocked out Cody Garbrandt, who the UFC has been pushing so hard for the past fucking 8 years or whatever, 7 years, and he knocked him the fuck out in that first round. So he took a lot of shine off of him, and now he beat Askarov, the number 2 ranked fighter in the division. Yeah, I mean, he has a good argument to be next for the title. So we've got like 3 fighters in, Pantoja, who has a win over Moreno. Royval, Alex Perez is exciting. Askarov could have had a title shot before this. He gets one more win and he's back in there. So there's lots to be. And we also had another fighter from this weekend get a big win. So good grief. This division is stacked and there's a huge logjam now. So we'll see what happens after the quadrilogy goes down. But in the meantime, France might need to take another fight. All right, so little bit of not necessarily controversy. I haven't seen anything online about it necessarily. Neil Magny versus Max Payne Griffin. I do like Neil Magny's newer, his nickname, the Haitian Sensation. I enjoy that quite a bit. I think it's fun. It's just fun. I like it. It gives him a little bit of flavor. He's been in the division for so long, and he's been a contender for the past fucking 10 years. He's just a division mainstay. Never really got his title shot because he just, kept failing when he excelled, or kept failing when he got put up against the best in the division. But anyway, he gets a split decision win here. Let's break it down round by round, and then we'll talk about what I thought about it, and then also a bit about 3-round versus 5-round fights. And then we'll maybe do a speed round for the rest of the card here. So round by round, here we go. First round, Griffin caught Magny a couple times and dropped him with a straight right. Big fucking shots from Griffin. All right, Griffin landing on top and kicking the legs well through the round. Landing up top, sorry. At one point, outright running from Magny. That is just such... I understand that it's an effective technique, but it's just not a good look. We've seen the memes, we've seen the GIFs of fighters turning their back and running away from the other guy to get their back off the cage. And that's exactly what happened here. It's just not a good look, man. Again, I'm not shitting on the guy because it works, but it's really fucking bad. Like, everybody laughed at Conor McGregor when he did it to Diaz. No one's going to mention it here. Alistair Overeem has done it multiple times. He used running away as an effective technique for a long time to extend his UFC career and his wins. But if we look at the first round here, 30-16 in favor of Griffin. Huge shots, lots of damage. Magny was having a problem. He wasn't landing his jab. He was having a problem with the movement of Griffin. And he wasn't able to get necessarily his timing or distance. He just couldn't, he couldn't get comfortable. He couldn't find a way in on Griffin that made sense, and he kept getting caught. So there was also an eye poke from Griffin on Magny in the at the beginning of the second round. But after Griffin darts in, after he's darting in, he was exiting out to the left and the right really well, dodging a lot of Magny's output, and that was the problem. Is Magny wasn't able to land really good shots. In the second round here, Magny did much better. staying in the pocket and landing good shots of his own. So he's willing to take a little bit of the damage, but he stayed in there and kind of not cornered him, but got to get a little bit of these extended exchanges. It was just weird to see Magny get out-volumed, which is what I was seeing there. He just wasn't landing as much as an opponent, and I don't think he had big enough shots in that second round to outscore Griffin. So I had Griffin up 2018, and if you look on the scorecard, on the striking numbers here, 30-26 in favor of Griffin in the second round. Yeah, there might have been, was there grappling exchanges in the second round? No. No, there was some control time as far as like clinch goes, but there was no, not a ton. Magny, I don't think Magny did enough in that second round to win it. So we're going to the third round, and I think Magny needs a finish. So in the third round, it was a dominant round for Magny with back control and damage, even a fucking pile driver to end the round. Like, he was on his back and just unloading on him, and then at one point, Griffin kind of got on top for a second, but then they both stand up, and then Griffin drops down for a double leg takedown, and Magny grabs him by the waist, lifts him up, and does a fucking like WWE style pile driver on him and throws him on the ground dismissively almost. And I mean, I don't know if that round was enough for a 10-8 as far as this last round goes, in favor of Magny being, he only landed 12-7. Obviously, it's a round for Magny, but I don't know if he did enough to get a 10-8. That last slam and the fact that he had so much positive control, but Griffin did put a little bit back. So, I mean, I would maybe give it to him because he also did stagger Griffin at one point with a good shot, and he had all the he had all the control in that big slam. I'd maybe give him a 10-8. Most likely this was going to go 29-28 in favor of Griffin, but I could see it being a 28-28 draw. I'd be okay with that too. But that's not what we got here. No, we had a split decision here. Eric Colon and Cel D'Amato saw it in favor of Magny, and then Todd Schwartz saw it in favor of Griffin. So I also had it for Griffin. I don't think that the right guy won this fight, even though I like Magny. But that brings me to my real point in this fight is I'm going to go off on a little bit of a rant/tangent here, and then I will move on to the rest of this card. We'll go through it pretty quick, hopefully. So here's the problem with 3-round versus 4-round fights. Oh, also here, Neil Magny. Let's look at his ranking because also, hold on. I think we should look at his record recently because he's done really well. Yeah, he had that bad loss to Michael Chiesa, but since then, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good God, he's 5-1. Jing Liang, Anthony Rocco Martin, Robbie Lawler, Jeff Neal, and Max Griffin. It's a guy, in my opinion, it's, that's enough to get a title shot. I understand that he shouldn't based off of the other fighters, but that is enough to warrant a title shot on any other, in any other circumstance. Before this weekend, ranked number 9. I don't think he's moving up too much after this performance, especially because it was split decision. So anyway, let's talk about 3-round versus 5-round fights. Like I said, I will talk about this. Oh, I didn't say it at the top. If you want to skip this, go to the next timestamp if you just want to see the next fight. I'm going to talk about this right now. We're going to talk about 3-round versus 5-round fights right now. Okay. So specifically when it comes to Neil Magny, I think he exemplifies why this is a problem. So the problem with 3 versus 5-round fights is titles are contested over 5 rounds. Therefore, you can't win a division or be the champion without winning a 5-round fight, right? There's no confusion there, right? We all understand that. In order to be a champion, you have to win a 5-round fight. It doesn't have to take you 5 rounds. You could win it in 1 every single time. Doesn't matter. What I'm saying is you have to be in a 5-round fight, scheduled for 5 rounds, in order to win a title in the UFC. It is the rules, right? That is how we contest championship fights and main events. But to get that title shot, there's no rule that says you have to have a main event fight. So you don't necessarily have to fight 5 rounds. Actually, there's been other non-main events that they have been making 5 rounds since then. So maybe we're moving towards that. I think that it warrants at least a good look and a discussion, because let's say I'm an excellent fighter over 3 rounds, and I beat a lot of guys who would beat me in 5 rounds, but we never fought for 5, so I beat them in 3 every single time. Right? All I have to do is I'm a good 2-round fighter, and the 3rd round I coast. Okay? And I can beat a lot of guys who would be able to beat me in those last 3 rounds, but it doesn't matter because I win the decision every time. And now I get the title shot over all these guys who rightfully, in my opinion, should be fighting for a title because they are better 5-round fighters, and that's the title. Every single title fight is fought over 5 rounds. In order to get there, though, you don't necessarily have to show that you can fight for 5 rounds, or you don't even have to be scheduled for it. So someone like Magny exemplifies this really well. In this fight, you could tell by the 3rd round how it was going to go if this went 2 more rounds. Magny was probably going to take over, barring some very, explosive shot from Max that lands. But if we look at the 3-round fight, in my opinion, I think Griffin won it because he won the first 2 rounds. So Magny is a good 5-round fighter. He's an okay 3-round fighter. Well, if he's good at 5 rounds, that means he's good for title fights. But he's not necessarily good for challenger fights or building up to the title to get there in the first place. There's just a huge dichotomy between who's good at getting to a title and who's good at fighting in title fights. Now, I'm not making excuses, and I'm not saying it isn't fair, because everybody has the same rule set that they're following. Okay, so you can adjust your game plan, as you should, to better suit the situation and the circumstances that you are given. So knowing that you're fighting for 3 rounds, maybe don't hold off the gas for 2.5 rounds, right? Maybe turn it on a little bit earlier. Maybe turn it on after 1 round. It's just, for me, watching this fight, just triggered something in my brain that said, hey, this is kind of messed up, because you could be the best 5-round fighter in the world. No one can beat you. Honestly, let's say I'm the best 3-round fighter in the world and you're the best 5-round fighter in the world. If we're fighting for a title, right? So in this specific example, I want to say you could never lose over 5 rounds and I could never lose over 3 rounds. So in this example, I always win the first 2, you always win the last 3. Okay? If we're fighting for the title, you're the title holder for eternity. But in order to get to the title, you might not get there. I might get the title shot before you do. In fact, I might get the title shot, lose the title fight, have to fight you, beat you, so now you're kicked back down the rankings, and I get another title shot. You might never get a title shot because you might never get the opportunity to fight for 5 rounds. And I think that's a problem. Again, I don't think it's not fair. I don't think it's unfair or anything like that. I think it's a problem. It's a problem in the structure of fights, the title fights, and all of these things. Okay, I don't think that it's a good method. Chael Sonnen has talked about this. He's like, it was an arbitrary decision to make it 3 rounds. It's an arbitrary decision to make it 5 rounds. It's an arbitrary decision to make it 5 minutes. All of these things can be changed by the commission. All of it's a bunch of, random decisions that were made along the way by people who were at the time the most experienced or the people who with the most respected opinions in the sport. Someone like Big John McCarthy. So what do you think? Seriously, let me know what you think. I almost want to do a breakdown of this and talk about fighters in the past who weren't able to succeed because they're just a better 5-round fighter than they are a 4-round fighter or a 3-round fighter. So you tell me, what do you think? Do you think it's perfectly fine? Do you not care? Do you think that this is not an issue at all and, I'm just making a big deal out of nothing? Or do you think that again, the way I'm saying this is because this is my opinion and it's very, it's subjective to me. So I'm pushing this narrative that I do think it is an issue, something that should be looked at, right? I think that if we're going to have a 5-round title fight, mandatory contention. Right, sorry. Let's say it's a mandatory 5 rounds for every single title fight in UFC, which is what it is right now. I'm more than happy to concede that. There's no problem with it. I have no issues with there being 5 rounds. I think that leading up to it, which is many times the case, you should have to fight at least one 5-round fight. At least one. Okay? It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to always weed out the people who can't fight over 5 rounds, because what if we have 2 really good 3-round fighters fight each other? Okay? And also, this is MMA. There's a shitload of variables, right? So that good 3-round fighter could beat a good 5-round fighter every time because he's so good in the first 2 rounds, he just knocks everybody out like Ngannou does, right? That kind of shit. Or he's so good that he goes up 10-8, and he just puts you in a hole that you can't get out of. That's what I'm saying. So I think that there is a good argument to be made that before you get a title shot, you should have to contest at least one fight over 5 rounds, because that evens out the playing field when it comes to the division, right? I've talked about this before. The lead up to being going into the title is like incredibly, incredibly important to not just your legacy, but a fighter's ability to even get to the title in the first place. But that doesn't necessarily translate to how well they're going to hold the belt or how long they're going to be able to hold that belt, because the challenges of leading up to that title fight are completely different than the ones of holding the belt. And I'm okay with that. I'm fine with conceding the fact that you're going to have to fight different fighters and that kind of things leading up to it versus when you are a champion. Like, that's just the way things are. But you should at least have to contest one fight over 5 rounds. All right. I've said my piece. We are moving on. I'm going to talk about Diakiese versus Borshchev. Yeah, Mark Diakiese versus Vyacheslav Borshchev. That's how they were pronouncing it, was Borshchev. His name is Slava Claus. Let's go with that. Slava. I love that nickname. I think it's fantastic. I've talked about it before. This fight, Slava had some really good takedown defense in the first round when it comes to a subpar wrestler like Diakiese. But Diakiese did eventually get that first. Here, you want to look at the fucking totals for this? And by the way, I did not like this fight. I'll explain why. Significant total significant strikes, 17-12 in favor of Diakiese. Borshchev actually outlanded Diakiese in the first round 5-4, but then got outlanded 9-5 and then 4-2 in the last 2 rounds. So you could maybe even make an argument that Slava Claus over here won that first round off of damage. I didn't. Diakiese was wrestling really heavily, and he wanted no part of the striking, and he got a takedown at 2:45 and then stayed on the ground the whole time in the first round for easy 10-9 for him. Diakiese with the takedown at 4 minutes the 4-minute mark on the second round, and he was down the whole time. No damage from him though. Didn't really fucking do anything. You could fast forward through that entire round and not miss shit. But who cares? He was up 20-18. So going into the third round, all he has to do is coast. And that's exactly what he fucking did. 30-27. My notes exactly. Can't stand guys who can't wrestle when they do this shit. They don't know how to do damage on the ground or go for submissions. They're just looking to stay on top and avoid damage. So doing that once in a while when you're hurt, like I've talked about City Kickboxing, I call them City Panic Wrestle because a lot of their fighters do that. It happens, right? It's a natural inclination, and it can win you rounds, and it's not necessarily my favorite thing to see, but whatever. That's fine. But when that's your strategy, is just to get the guy on the ground and just lay and pray. Not ground and pound, not going for it. He wasn't advancing anything. Dude, he just sat there. Looked like shit. I did not like this fight. Not fun. I did not like that at all. You know what? I'm going to break this up. I'm going to make a second video, shorter one, going over the prelims here, just because. We're going to end it on that note. Okay, super high note to end on. Shit. Like I said, though, but on the start of this, the super fun card, really fun to watch. Overall, like, it moved pretty quick. Lots of fun fights. Good. I mean, freaking, you had slobber knockers in the Brown versus Barberena thing. You had back and forth with the Cara France versus Askarov as far as like grappling exchanges versus striking. You had Magny versus Griffin, which was a closely contested fight, which was fun. You had the main event, which was a great knockout from the heavyweights instead of being a heavyweight bore fest, so that was great. And then you had Grasso getting the submission finish on Wood. So, like, the main card had it all. So, if you could, I would really appreciate it, especially if you made it this far. Like, how'd you make it this far? Also, my dog's in the background. If you made it this far, obviously you liked some part of this, so I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button. So let me know that you do like these videos, because I have found out that less people like the UFC videos than the other ones that I'm posting, which is interesting. So maybe I'll have to focus more on those things, and that really does indicate that I will do more, indicate to me that I should do more of those in the future. So I do look at those things. Please comment down below. Let me know what you thought about the fights. Do you agree with my take on the 3-round versus 5-round? All those things. So, and please, if you like this stuff, if you like this video, I do this every single week. Please subscribe. I talk about fights every single week for sure. I talk about every single UFC card. So if you enjoy all that stuff, please subscribe. My dog's barking. Got to get going. All right. Love y'all. Have a great week.